Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. It is currently February 28th, 2010, which means two things. It is Day 9 Daily number 78, and I need to pay my rent. Whoops. So, yeah, I'm super excited today. We had this unbelievably kick-ass TSL Finals today, which all of you should check out. I think we got over 20,000 viewers on that, with a whole bunch of people on the Team Liquid stream, and there was a bunch of relays going on in Poland and Germany and all over Europe, so it's pretty cool to see that a StarCraft event, like 12 years after its initial release, is already getting that much popularity. I mean, that's so great to see that it's still hanging in there. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of StarCraft 2 action today, because I'm eagerly awaiting it to explode onto the esports scene. And speaking of which, I need to kind of issue a big apology for what transpired with MLG, because I basically completely misunderstood and put him in a really awkward position. So let me explain to you what happened. This is great. This is classic me. So they arranged for a show match between Artosis and Louder, and they invited me on to do the commentaries. Of course, I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that, right? And for some reason, I just assumed that it was going to be streamed live, so I announced on my stream, I posted everywhere. I was like, hey guys, tune in on Saturday night. And then they messaged me and they're like, Sean, it's actually going to be recorded on Saturday night because we want to see how it flows, see if there's any technical difficulties, see if Battle.net can support this sort of thing, see where the difficulties lie, and then we'll post it, and later we'll consider doing live. So I was like, ugh, crap. So one of the MLG folks said, well, you know what? I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to try to get the VODs up immediately. So we did the event, and we recorded it. Of course, people are asking for the stream, getting all raging, And then and we finished, and it got produced and everything, but it can't be published yet. We need to wait 2 or 3 days, given their processes. So so it turns out that we had to be wrong again. We had to be hey, we're going to come out, right afterwards to try to appease the fact that I actually misspoke. So now there's a whole bunch of people who are bummed out on the forums. So my sincerest apologies to all the lovely viewers of the Day 9 Daily who have gotten you excited to shut you down. Because if we just came out on Tuesday and we're like, hey, there was a show match between Artosis and Louder, check it out to see who won, everyone would be like, yay, StarCraft 2 coverage. But if you say to someone on the internet, I'm going to provide this, and then you don't, the internet will have its way with you. So my sincerest apologies to the internets on that one. So today, we're going to be checking out a marvelous little game between Nazgul and Ogre, who are two fantastic players from Europe. Nazgul, as you know, owns TeamLiquid.net, so he is quite a force in the StarCraft community. He helped organize Team Liquid Star League, and I desire a little bit of chapstick. Yeah, getting some dry lips in the middle of the cast there. Perfect. Nice and moisturized, ready to go. And in this game, it's about 50 minutes long, and it's a little bit longer of a game, but what I love about it is that it gets to show what StarCraft 2 is like when you start getting to the late game, and we get to see some really interesting unit compositions go on. So we're going to have a good opportunity to check this out. I'm going to be, perhaps a little bit critical in this game, but I think it's useful for learning just to sort of look at it as though this game has been existing for a long time, give people the opportunity to pretend that it is as competitive of an environment as, of course, everyone wants it to be. So again, another part of the reason why I'm really excited that MLG is getting into StarCraft 2, because they just did a fantastic job on that Saturday night. And of course, none of you will know that until the videos get posted, so sorry again. Already I'm noticing something pretty cute here. Nazgul is making a pylon on 8. Most people actually are making that pylon on 9 nowadays. It's interesting to see what the effect of this is. So this is the sort of thing... Oh, actually, let me just come back over here to the camera, because I think this is a super important point to reiterate. In any of your replay watching adventures, make sure you are constantly trying to create questions for yourself. Not necessarily opinions, because a lot of people are great at doing that, I think this strategy is awful, or, oh, isn't that cool? Think, what is good about that, and what is bad about that? We're going to be doing a lot of that this game, and every time I watch a replay casually, I always make sure that there are some questions that I have, because there's two things. First of all, it helps you get better. And second of all, it just motivates playing. You just want to play more and more and more. This is the first thing I'm noticing. By getting this pylon out on 8, we can chrono boost very early right now. With our first 25 energy, we can chrono boost this Protoss. And then look, even with chrono boost, this pylon still manages to finish in time. As I've been playing, I've been actually pyloning on 9 in this matchup. Or actually in all matchups with Protoss. And that means I end up chrono boosting around the time that the first pylon finishes as opposed to beforehand. So it's kind of cool that he's able to get this out so far. Get all this stuff out so early, that is. So what I would do in terms of learning is I would pause and say, he just hit 14 food at the 2-minute mark. Can I do that if I pylon on 9? What's the difference? And then, of course, I might end up favoring a pylon on 8. And, of course, I might note that when you do pylon on 8, you get this very, very low mana count on the Nexus. So if I was doing some sort of 2-gate rush, I might not be the biggest fan of that. So we look over here in Ogre's base. He is just doing everything pretty nice normally, getting early Marines, just getting an early orbital command, so you can get that extra boost to your economy, and rallying Marines to the front, and I just love the way he's going to open this game. This is real interesting to me. He gets the early reactor. Virtually all Terran players we're seeing nowadays favor the early tech labs. They can get Reapers to harass, they can get some Marauders to do some junk with that, but no, we're seeing early Marines just pumping those Marines out. Continue to make depots. We're going to see an expand come down here in just a moment. Meanwhile, we're seeing Nazgul. He's getting the sentry up, doing Le Micro, and going for the very early robotics facility, which I think is going to be pretty standard for Protoss. Right now, I actually like doing this in all matchups, with the maybe exception of Protoss versus Protoss. But even then, I just really like this early robotics facility, because Immortals are sweet. How can you not like an Immortal, man? Like, we're even going to just talk about it when it pops up and just oogle at how sweet it is. The first observer pops out. Nazgul getting a lot of early intel right here. And we like any strategy that gives us this, that lets us sneak into our opponent's base, as long as we have some huge deviation planned based on that. A lot of people just scout early for peace of mind, especially now that StarCraft 2 is just coming out and people are not experienced with the timings. They don't know what they can and can't get away with. They just feel uncomfortable. So what they do is they try to scout aggressively to ease that nagging feeling in the game. I don't really know what's going on here. Instead, what you should do is try to be a little bit clueless in the game. Try to make an assumption about what your opponent is doing and see if that assumption was correct, and be testing how much you can assume. And then after a while, you'll realize that you're starting to discover ways that you can get away with early expanding, with perhaps not cutting probes here and there, with cutting units, doing all sorts of cool stuff for the long term. And a factory being made, many Marines. We have a bunker down already, an early expand going on. And I didn't actually know that that command centers could carry SCVs. I'm learning all sorts of new stuff with StarCraft 2. I learned, not long ago that Overlords can vomit creep once you get a layer, so that's totally awesome. First of all, because it looks hilarious, but also because it helps you build mobility a lot. We're going to see this sort of early Immortal push coming out here by Nazgul. I love the Immortal. They're so cool. The Terran is going for this early tech and getting a starport pretty quickly. I'm noticing that we haven't gotten any sort of geysers here. I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm going, wow, it's actually possible to tech to a starport after expanding pretty quickly just by gassing at some semi-early time. I'm curious, though, if we did something like mine minerals for longer and then just double gas a little bit later, whether that would have been better or not. Something that I would want to test. Notice how I am formulating questions and opinions and thoughts and ideas. Another question I'm starting to think to myself is, I'm noticing the Protoss is getting this pretty big push ready. He has 3 unit-producing structures, these 2 gateways and this robotics facility. Is an early push necessarily good, or should he have maybe cut that gateway? So that way he could have expanded earlier. Can he do some sort of early busting? I don't know. Something I would like to test. And of course we have the observers being thrown down here. Just keep an eye on everything and getting the starport. In the most recent build, they just buffed a whole bunch of Terran air. So a lot of Terrans are getting super overeager about that. To do any sort of like Banshee or Viking strategy. And by the way, I think this giant meteor, that is so cool. Look at this. This giant thing with flames is a mule that looks like it's going to land there, but I can get the camera like right over it. Alright, sweet. Sorry, I'm just having a little graphical orgasm there. One thing that I love about Immortals is they do plus 30 damage versus armored, so that means they do 50 damage per shot, and they shoot pretty quickly, and buildings are armored. Every single building's armored. We can actually see here, where's one building? There we go. Notice it says armored mechanical structure. I'm super curious to see how many early pushes can be done by Protoss that can bust the Terran's front. So let's just slow it down. This battle is going to be on slower, so I'm going to be doing that several times in this game, just to try to highlight all sorts of little neat stuff going on in the battle rather than rewinding. So we have all of these Immortals just doing tons of damage, but look at this, a planetary fortress. This thing does 40 damage per shot. Very creative way to defend that early expansion, just with Marines and a planetary fortress. But we're seeing even here, look at these Immortals. They really haven't taken any damage. Look, all of them are at relatively high life. If I think I can hit play, and if I hold the Alt key, I know this works in single player. Yeah, hey, it works right here in the replay as well. We can see that almost full life on these Immortals. So perhaps there would have been a chance to break this, but probably not, given this planetary fortress. So I already like this expansion, this early expo job right here, because we're getting 2 Stargates up, or starports up very early. So after I saw this failed rush, I was going, is this necessarily the best idea to do this sort of early push? It's 51 food versus around 54 food. Cool, you can destroy buildings. I had no idea about that. I'm trying to do a little bit of damage here, killing off, actually it's quite a bit of damage taking against Flight Eco like that. But Protoss has only just now gotten an expansion up, and we have the robotics bay researching. Notice that because we didn't rush to get a Colossus, we have a little bit of extra gas so we can get that extended thermal lance upgrade, which ups the, okay, get this, it ups Colossus range from 6 to 9. That's so much range. So look at this, getting the Banshees out, and Banshees, in this game we're going to see a ton of Banshee action going down. Banshee's just doing this tremendous amount of damage. It's mind-blowing how fast they kill stuff. So look at this, just a nice little bunker turtle action by Ogre. And I'm starting to piece together some nice transitions for Terran. Early expand and turtle, and then as you go air, you get some Banshees, so we're able to do this sort of harassment. Look how fast these probes are dying. Look at this. This is brutal. Part of me thinks that in this matchup, we might have to just get a forge with some cannons earlier on, because this is just doing so much damage. But while you're getting all this air to do harassment, you suddenly get a whole bunch of barracks for ground, and then you have 3 starports here to get a bunch of medevacs. What a cool transition. Now, part of me is really strongly thinking that the Terran player does not have nearly enough money to support 4 barracks and 3 starports. I think that's a little too overbold there. But that's something that would come with adjustment over time, just sort of fixing that. But I love this idea, because these Banshees are going to do a ton of damage, and then the medevacs are going to come out, and you're going to have a very nice, solid push. And you're really pushing the Protoss player back. I mean, watch how quickly that fell. It was just like, I think just 3 or 4 volleys from all these Banshees. Let's go ahead and speed it up, because you'll note we have about another 40 minutes to go. Still running out here. I'm not sure if you necessarily need to run from that, because Banshees only do, Banshees do full 24 damage. 2 Stalkers, and Stalkers only do 8 damage against air. So just a outrageous amount of damage being done there. And Nazgul continuing to turtle and just getting a whole bunch of Colossi, building some cannons here. Probably going to want to build some cannons there. Yeah, building them pretty far out. And a lot of people dislike this sort of cannon placement in StarCraft 1. They think it's newbie. They think that the pros always put their defenses right here in the mineral line. But especially if you're dealing with some sort of air harassment, building some things out here and here, especially because these photon cannons are pretty decent against air, you can end up just fending things off and getting them to scatter back while you can pull all your Stalkers in. You don't have to worry about anything really getting here until these fall. They kind of buy a lot of time. And lots of Banshees being made, and a whole bunch of Medic Marine being made. And look at this! It's a sweet little Banshee medevac push. This is great with a whole bunch of Marines. Notice he has the life upgrade for Marine, that combat shield to give him 10 extra life. He has this +1 attack upgrade. This is a very nice timing attack. A lot of people just attack just randomly. And I think it's really important to try to establish reasons to attack. And this is going to happen a lot in especially everyone's early StarCraft 2 experience, where, again, you don't really know how things work, you don't know what's strong, what's weak. But the motivations you can get for a timing attack don't necessarily have to revolve just around what your opponent's doing. So, for instance, I love the fact that this Terran player got it seemingly right after he got a +1 attack upgrade. Is it a good time or a bad time? Well, I don't know, but this helps me think that it is at least a reasonable time for you to adjust. A lot of players just arbitrarily make stuff and go out and attack, and those funky arbitrary attack numbers would take years to figure out the timing on. Yeah, by the way, don't stim and run into Colossi, because then they'll one-shot kill you, as we saw right there. But perhaps a few too many Marines right there. And of course, I'm curious how fast Marines heal, so I'm just going to hold this alt. I'm going to get a pretty good idea that they heal relatively quickly. So that's kind of cool. But I'm questioning this unit composition right now by the Terran. Those Medic Marines seem to die very, very, very quickly. I have almost no use. Oh, and this is cool. Terrans love expanding to the center here very early on and building a planetary fortress there. So that way they can get this maximum resource, they can have defense here, and they cut off one of the center mineral areas. Because most of the time, Terran and StarCraft 1 were the more passive, less mobile race, so they would expand away, they would expand to hidden areas along the backside of the map. But not so much in StarCraft 2. You have a lot more opportunities to be bold with your expansions. Look at this guy. Oh my god, he is pumped and ready to shoot stuff. And this planetary fortress is constantly just looking for stuff to shoot. I actually watched this guy for like 5 minutes in the original game. Or excuse me, the original time I watched this replay. And by the way, this seems to happen a ton in StarCraft 2. I've noticed more players forgetting guys in the gas than in StarCraft 1. Notice that there's only 2 guys and the guys are here. Definitely something I'd be looking to improve. Looks like we have, yeah, a lot of guys in these geysers right now. But for some reason, it's so easy in StarCraft 2 to mess this up. Like, here's 2 guys over here. I mean, I've been messing it up in a lot of my games. I've seen a lot of my friends mess it up. So, here's a cool unit composition from Nazgul. It has a bunch of Colossi, which, as you'll note, just completely demolish most ground, especially Marines. We have some Zealots in the mix, which are good early on because they're just minerals. That way we can get these pretty gas-heavy Colossus stuff going on and bolster with Zealots, but there's not so much anti-air. So let's go ahead and let's slow down to faster. Let's slow down to fast. So this Medic Marine group, watch here, it's going to just get trashed immediately. But these air units are just going to do a number on this. Yeah, the planetary fortress died, but I'm kind of the opinion that Protoss may have been at the bad end of this. Look how much damage this air is doing. Yeah, just murdering those sentries. Look how fast this Colossus life goes down. Just getting evaporated here. And even though these Immortals have that special shield that gives them the opportunity to hold off shots a lot better, still just not enough. So 133 food for the Terran, and 75 food for the Protoss. Here's a period of time where I think the Protoss, or excuse me, the Terran should have been really aggressive with those Banshees and Vikings. I don't see any reason not to be really up in Nazgul's face right now. Because, ordinarily you hear me say things like, don't get too overeager with your army, don't just like win a battle and just, oh, I'm going to win now and attack, because that's like the fastest way to lose. After you get an advantage is to just throw your whole army away for no good reasons. You'll hear me normally suggest things like expanding after you win a huge attack. But with all those Banshees, because they're so fast and because they're air, after you win a battle, you can just go in, see if you can do any damage anywhere, and just fly right back out again. Very, very easy technique to do. And there's no reason I can see why Terran wouldn't want to do that. A whole bunch of warp gates for Nazgul, kind of let his money get high. He's going to keep making those Colossi just because they do so much damage versus ground, and he's going to be going for this Stalker High Templar combination against the Banshees. I think at least one sentry is going to be super useful here, because then that way you can use that Guardian Shield ability to help defend against all that Banshee fire. And retaking these command centers. Look at the Terran just like expanding everywhere. Even trying to build a command center over here, and look, he's going to float it way over here to the center, and look how, oh my god, he just demolishes these armies. And I'm just surprised that the Terran has not won this game in this situation. It's kind of natural, once again, it's a new game, and we don't really know what's so strong against what. You don't know if you really are in a big advantage, but, you know, with air units, just try to poke around. I mean, you have all these Vikings, which is becoming an increasingly popular way to combat those Colossi. And we just have some observers and everything else just being continuously made, so let's just speed it up. So Nazgul looks like he's in a tricky situation. I like the fact that he's morphing all these cannons here. That's the sign of a really good gamer, the one who, even in the position of an advantage, realizes where his weaknesses are. Or should I say, when at a disadvantage, too, where a lot of players are just like, oh crap, I messed up, I lost all my stuff, and they continue to spam here, but this is a great job by Nazgul identifying the weakness right here, that air can just waltz right in and kill it off. Yet another reason why I think that this Terran should be more aggressive. Look at this huge army. This is so much stuff from Protoss. He's almost max. He's actually going to like get dual planetary fortresses here. And I fully defend this decision to expand aggressively like this, especially if we can poke in here and harass and then pop right back here again to defend. It gives us the opportunity to get in our opponent's face and expand in the places where he would normally want to be expanding. And Nazgul does the nice little sneaky tricky thing and just walks right by it. Just instead going for these back armies. Instead going for these back expansions, excuse me. And Nazgul, look, this is classic strong gamer action, right? He's going to build a pylon here and start building cannons, and then try to goop his cannons over to the left while he adds on another nexus. And when is he adding it? While he's attacking. Super good timing. I mean, it's almost less time to get the nexus up and more about getting those cannons up. So that way none of those air units can come in there and kill you off immediately. They're going to try to run, they're going to try to repair, but there's just like so much stuff here. And once again, notice how much these Banshees are going to just crush this sentry force. And these storms do a ton of damage, landing all these Vikings to try to do a little bit of extra hurt, but seems like the storm made it not so worth it. But man, look how many Banshees are still alive. It's unfortunate that this orbital command is going to go down, but I am shocked at how strong these Banshees are. This, in my eyes, is going to be like a serious issue for Protoss players to deal with, especially with that cloak problem. I mean, I'm sure that's part of the motivation why Nazgul even got this robotics facility so early, is he was thinking, oh man, I really need to have vision in case he does in fact go for that sort of cloaked Banshee rush. And I like the fact that Nazgul's being really, really aggressive. Look, only now as he's transferring these probes, he's having the opportunity to make sure this is nice and secure, and even open up the opportunity to hit this expansion while killing this expo off, and look, target firing the planetary fortress. Look at these, just one shot at a time, shutting down every little attack force. And Nazgul really wants to try to get in there. God, look at the range on this Colossus. 9 range. The planetary fortress only has 6 range, so way, way outranged on the ground front there. So, just continuing to macro away, a really tough spot, but I don't get why the Terran isn't attacking here. If there's anything that I would say is a big room for improvement, is why not attack? So, notice here, let's just do some math. We have 8 Banshees. One Banshee is going to do 26 damage, so that's over 200 damage per volley. That means that if we go up here to a Stalker and we fire at it with all our Banshees, this instantly dies. A photon cannon almost instantly dies when target fired. So we can just rip through this front right away, and if he tries to warp in more Stalkers, you can just kill him right then and there. So already I'm seeing an opportunity for the Terran player to just bust in there and win immediately. Just do some serious, serious damage. And it's kind of cool, that transition to Medic Marine, I think is interesting. The transition from air straight into Medic Marine, because then we have the opportunity to build all these extra medevacs. So that way we can repair all of our infantry. But I mean, even though it didn't work out here, it's still a cute thing to think about. Rushing for air and then transitioning back into ground. Doing a back tech, that's what I call it. Where you rush for something really high tech and then come back and make low level stuff. But as we can clearly see, looks like he's committing quite a bit just to mass air. But do stuff with mass air, it's so mobile. Building more stuff for defense, and he's going to poke around over here. It looks like he's going to try to do some damage, but oh man, those cannons made short work of that. Those Vikings got eliminated. They died so friggin' fast. Holy cow. So, a usual sort of Colossus, Sentry, Zealot, Templar mix. Part of me is curious if the Colossus is necessarily worth it at this stage in the game, whether it's actually more useful just to keep adding on pure ground to deal with that, because I mean the sentries really are not so strong against air. I mean, they get the bonus versus armored, but once again Banshees have that light defense type, so that means that the Phoenix, that Protoss unit, is going to be able to deal adequately with the Banshees, but not so much just sentries. Look at them just clustered there. 100 not sentries, Stalkers. You know what? I literally cannot say Stalker when I mean to say Stalker. Every time I want to say Stalker, I say Sentry. I'm just going to start calling them Dragoons. That's what they are from here on out, alright? These are goons, you guys. There were goons in StarCraft 1, and these are the goons in StarCraft 2. All they have to do now is have the worst AI in the game. And you know, I like this play by Nazgul, just constantly coming back around here to take out these expansions, because it makes these way more vulnerable. It takes these away from all the planetary fortress upgrades, and look at this. Just taking out these Templar one at a time. It's just like muta sniping. Killing off a building, just destroying everything on the map. Trying to storm, a little bit of a misclick there. I don't really know how easy storming is against air units, because, I mean, this is where you'd want to storm to hit these units up here. We're going to see some nice storms begin to go down. I'm actually going to select all these Banshees so we can kind of get a picture on what the life count's like. Look at the damage that storm's doing. That's just so much damage, now that everything's nice and clustered up there. But, I mean, still, this air composition is so good. But notice that Nazgul is slowly chipping away. He's slowly eliminating these expansions, and in the meantime, what has he done? He's taken another expansion. Just classic real-time strategy game logic here. Using that attack to get you more money, continuing to macro up a nice, huge army. Once again, I'm not so sure that these Colossi are the best choice, but at the same time, they're what's really doing the damage to these expansions, because they can only attack grounds. The only choice they have is to rip through all of these SCVs. So even though this food count for Ogre is pretty high, Nazgul is just being a lot more aggressive with smaller forces and having a lot more success with it. I really like this High Templar Dragoon combination. I'm curious to think of how Archons would influence it. Note that in StarCraft 2, the Archons don't do area damage, they just do single target shot damage, so I'm not too big a fan of the Archon at this stage. I really hope they bring back the area damage. That was awesome. Yeah, look. So I know there's a bunch of Banshees here, but I'm looking at this orbital command because I'm just noting how much damage these Colossi are doing. And look at these beautiful storms. Oh my god, I'm actually going to slow it down a little bit. Let's drop the speed. Jesus, those are just such great storms. Look at them, almost all of them in that mid-yellow life range. And we have a little bit of targeting going on right here. Look, just doing everything he can to take out that orbital command. Oh, it's at 100 hit points and it's gone. Thank you, Colossi, for your target firing effect. So right now, this is actually the only running base for the Terran, which is kind of funny. I mean, he's loaded on money, but he's just not being aggressive right now. I mean, this is such a huge army. He's still at 187 food, and Nazgul, who just lost his huge army, is at 125 food. I'm just seeing too much passivity from Ogre, which is, you know, reasonable. Again, beta, you don't really know. They're going to be adjusting this stuff, so, you know, all your opinions on things are constantly having to change. But, you know, Nazgul still having excellent decision-making. Look at all these little swing around a roost. I'm noticing that this composition is getting increasingly skewed towards Dragoons, a.k.a. Stalkers, a.k.a. not Sentries. He is still getting those Colossi, still is getting Templar, but I'm seeing a lot less Zealot and a lot more just straight-up Sentry production. And as we go to attack, we notice that lots of units are still being made for Nazgul. Hooray for good macro. Just doing everything he can to manage these expo counts for the Terran player. Real cool, relentless aggression. So I was saying right at the start of the cast of all the questions we should ask. We asked a handful of questions early on about Nazgul, and I've implied some questions for this Terran player. Can he be as aggressive as I'm implying he can be with all of these Banshees? I mean, look, he has over 24 Banshees, right? That's 28 Banshees. It's so much damage output. Can he possibly be aggressive enough with all of these Banshees? I don't know. That's something I would want to test. The second thing I'm thinking is, as Protoss, can I get away with expanding as much as we saw in this game? Because those Banshees are so mobile, maybe if my opponent was being a lot more active with them, I would have to turret a little bit more, I'd have to build more cannons, just generally play a lot more defensively. And also, do I like this army composition as Nazgul? What I would do afterwards is I would sit down and I would think and actually, you know, maybe even pull out a pencil and paper and think, okay, well this does this much damage and these guys are taking up a lot of my gas. Maybe what I could actually do, and consult your help menu, hooray, is you go over here to the Protoss units and you look at some other possibilities you have. For instance, the Sentry does quite a bit of damage. I mean, it just shoots pretty fast. It does 8 damage. That's as much as the Stalker is going to be doing against the air. But it also has that Guardian Shield upgrade. It's also very cheap on gas. Leaves you minerals left over so you can get pretty much more Dragoons. I'm curious, and of course the answer might turn out to be no. And what I'm going to do whenever I make this consideration is I'm going to think, what would be the advantages of getting this composition? And that would be that the Colossi pretty much deny any ground attempt he makes, and it kills off buildings and workers really quickly. And of course the downside might be the fact that, as we're seeing, the armies just keep dying over and over and over again. Look, there goes one Colossus. you know, just two-shotting the other Colossus real fast. Any target fires his own command center on accident. That's pretty much happened to everyone. I've actually been messing that up quite a bit. I've actually been constantly target firing my own Stalkers. I'll do like an Immortal Rush in Protoss vs. Terran, and I'll get my Stalkers up this ramp, and I'll be like, yeah, I got this, and I'll just target fire my Stalker and kill him in 2 shots and be like, herpy-der. Yeah, look at all that low life, right? Before the battle, we had 28 Banshees, and now we've been cut down to 16 Banshees. Big drop in our force, and all of them are very, very red. And look at Nazgul, macroed up another nice big force. Again, is that Colossus worth it? I'm not so sure. And part of me seeing that 3,000 gas and thinking, well, maybe if we added on a bunch more gateways, perhaps flooding Zealots would be good here. I mean, we can't really spend the gas. We don't have any gas left to spend, and maybe if we got enough minerals, we could break these sorts of areas a lot more easily and just sort of keep his Banshees on the run. Yeah, look at how fast these Zealots and these Colossi are just ripping all this stuff to shreds. And Terran's a little bit leery to engage that because he knows that all his units' life are so low, and there's a bunch of Templar and the sentries. And, you know, I already like this. Nazgul, see, he's splitting up his army a little bit. Well, looks like he just pretty much has his army as one. You know, they do have some nice features where, you know, if you have your army selected as one, you can tab through units to cycle through their abilities, but I still, like some StarCraft 1 player, I prefer having the important units hotkeyed to something different, so that way when I'm attacking, I can just hit 2 and then storm. And see, look, you get that same thing that we saw at the start of the game, building cannons far away from where you want the expo to go down. So that way, you can get the defense up out of sight range of any of this other stuff, out of sight range of a lot of times the spotters that are checking out for stuff. And then what you can do is, you know, get the expansion up. But when I was watching this game, I felt like Nazgul was losing the whole game, and then just sort of eventually won. But upon watching this again, I'm starting to really think that Nazgul is just doing a phenomenal job being really aggressive and getting a really nice unit composition. I'm just interested at the fact that he still has these Colossi up, and it looks like he's even getting a second robotics facility so we can get yet more Colossi. Again, I do want to know, if I'm doing this style as Ogre, is it possible for me to be more aggressive and harass a bunch more with my Banshees? So, getting in here, I mean, this sort of air transition is going to spell a lot of trouble for Protosses. It's going to really change the way that things end up going down. I mean, these cannons, they're falling reasonably quickly, but, I mean, they're doing a ton of damage. They're definitely giving the damage output that you want right now. Too bad there weren't any Templar here. They're actually stuck somewhere. No, actually, I don't think there were any Templar here. And yeah, it's all getting canceled off, and this probe should definitely go try to hide somewhere back here. Some little cheap things that you try to do just to maybe give yourself another chance of winning at a later point in time. And we see some Ravens being added for some auto turrets, which do a pretty decent amount of damage, 8 damage per shot, but mainly it's the life, I think, that they're most useful for. Yet another expansion right here, and Ogre, who's pretty much been passive most of the game, I'd say, is now forced to be passive. He had the option to be aggressive earlier on, but it's just nerve-wracking right here. You know, if you go to attack down here in this main, you have a whole bunch of units that have constantly been coming up this right lane up here towards these expansions. Or if you take all your Banshees and you try to move over here and kill this off, you know that the rally point for Protoss has actually been down here. So Protoss might just happily waltz all the way up here and kill you off up there. You know, there's a lot of big dangers for counterattack, so I think that this might be a really good spot for Terran to just run up here and to build a sensor tower here or here, just in one of these lanes, and then start, you know, hawk-eyeing the mini-map to make sure that there's no sort of counterattack coming up. Again, you always got to think, if I'm worried about blank, you should instead think, how can I stop blank from ever happening in the first place? Instead of saying, you know, well, what's the most obvious way to defend from blank? So, for instance, you know, counterattack, well, I'll just leave all my units here, and then you won't be able to attack me. Yeah, done. I mean, it's certainly true that you can't get counterattacked when that's going on, but, I mean, you want to be doing stuff with your units, you know. This isn't tower defense, as awesome as tower defense is, and as awesome as Plants vs. Zombies is. Oh, God, best game in the universe. We're not playing Plants vs. Zombies, we're trying to kill nerds over the internet, so it's important that you try to be aggressive as possible. That's why I like that sensor tower thing right here is that it's not being overly cautious. This sensor tower, a lot of people actually are going to use the sensor tower for that ease of mind thing, just to go, okay, well, I'm going to know if any attack's coming. No way, build the sensor tower as a tool to be aggressive, so you can pull back and deal with counterattacks in time. I think that's going to be ultra important, especially if they start making more adjustments to Terran, to possibly make them less mobile. Right now, this sort of air army, you'll note, is pretty damn mobile. Like, it can fly anywhere it wants. So maybe we'll see over time that they do some changes with that. A few more Marines being added in. Why? Because Terran is feeling locked into these expansions and is trying to figure out a way to just spend his money in a way that's advantageous to the game. And this is going to happen a ton with your early testings of this game, where you'll realize you have more of a certain resource than you'd originally thought. And for instance, with minerals, my friend Tristan joked, well, my strategy is, whenever I have bad macro, I just expand a couple more times. And because players aren't used to being aggressive, he's able to just get away with these ridiculous expansion techniques. But what we're seeing right here is that the Protoss has really put a lot of pressure on this Terran player. The Terran is thinking, yeah, I actually can't get away with just throwing some expos down here and here. Therefore, I need to think of how to get an army composition that actually spends all my money, that isn't just saving up for expansions. Getting the Marines right now, I think, is a reasonable on-the-fly adjustment, but I would think after the game whether or not you actually could get away with spending that money on just extra expansions so you could get more gas to get more air. And the Ravens leading in, throwing out some of this point defense drones. Oh, our Hunter-Seeker missiles, that was so awesome. They deal about 100 damage in area effect, and we see they just demolished that little force right there. I mean, this air army is looking super gas intensive, but if you can pull it off, look at how much damage this is doing. Still, the Terran has had the food lead over the Protoss almost all game. Again, I don't know if that's good or bad in StarCraft 2. Excuse me, in StarCraft 1 that was certainly bad if Protoss was ever behind the Terran in food, but note that we are not in StarCraft 1. And I'm not saying that really to be facetious. I mean, that's like, it's an important consideration to make, because I constantly feel myself putting my StarCraft 1 ideas into StarCraft 2 without any real testing or knowledge or facts there. I'm trying to think of like the best example of how I did this. Oh yeah, as Terran, for instance, I was really leery of throwing down another expansion, because in my head I was like, oh yeah, well Terran is the immobile race in StarCraft 1, because they need to go siege, they need to get in good positions, they need to have room to maneuver around, so it's hard to get there. But StarCraft 2, not so much the case. You know, you have a lot of freedom to move around, especially with those big mobile Marine Marauder armies that are so popular nowadays. You can actually get away with expanding quite a bit, and I'm curious to see maybe if maybe Terran will be the race that expands the most of all three. There's no reason why it shouldn't. I mean, I know the designers... Ooh, look at that beautiful EMP. I think it got like every unit that Nazgul's ever made. Let's hold the Alt key, and wow, look at those gray bars on top. Wow, that got a lot. Yeah, sorry. Going back to that earlier point, the designers have tried to make it so that Zerg is the sort of huge en masse race that does a lot of the destructioning, you know, a lot of the expanding everywhere, and don't just like take that at face value. Try to see if you can force the race to do what you want it to do, and then, you know, worry about what the narrative of it is supposed to be later. Like, narratively, Zerg is supposed to be all power overwhelming, all huge units running out everywhere. And this is a classic example of, in a strategy game, scout all the expansions. You never know where your Protoss is going to want to go. Because I guarantee you that Nazgul was just not, Terran was just not expecting to, you know, see it base up there. And look how many more Dragoons are in this unit mix. Dragoons, aka Stalkers there. Really nice unit composition there. And again, look at the sim. Look at that. Just murdering those so fast. This Colossus. Just one of them already has 15 kills, and they're pretty much all Marines. Actually, they might just be all Marines. And with this big Stalker force, I mean, tons of storms are going to be going down. And Nazgul, where's he going to attack? This is so smart. A lot of players would get their force here, and they would keep wandering up like this until they hit to this expansion and kill it. But Nazgul's smart. He's going to pull all the way over here to the left and then attack this way. So that way, if air comes to hit him, it's here where there's no high ground to get in the way. If Nazgul was moving at this angle, the air would be moving in from here, and there would be that high ground issue. make it very difficult to get all his units all the way in there to do the damage. So for the first time this game, Nazgul's pulling ahead in food. 161 food to 131 food. And as you'll note, this replay is almost done, so perhaps that is a spoiler. But look at this nice little composition. When Nazgul started to cut back on the Colossi and really wait till he had these giant Stalker armies, a lot of benefit came out of it. Look at this beautiful storming that's going to occur. That's just some wonderful storming action going on there. Oh, yeah. And of course, in this battle, little things we note, like, let's just rewind a little bit, because, you know, I like doing a little bit of battle analysis here. Loading it up. Oh, guys, I just rewound a replay. StarCraft 1 player's dream, man. So always be watching for little things like this. This in particular happens a lot of times in Roach versus Roach battles, or actually just most battles with Roaches, because the Roaches will tend to make these auto-concaves. I mean, I probably shouldn't say auto-concaves, because it's not like the algorithm is specifically designed to get them in this formation, but what we're going to see is these Dragoons up here should start being pulled down here to participate in the fight. Like, run, click here, shoot. Click here, shoot, until you get all these Stalkers involved in actually fighting the Banshees. Notice how these guys are doing a good job. They're shooting these Vikings, but a lot of these guys are still shooting these buildings. Watch how they're not participating in the battle. Always looking for rooms to improve the micro of our units. Oh, look, meanwhile, there was a battle down here, and it wasn't the biggest deal, because Nazgul had just so much stuff. He was going to kill it off, but yeah, we could sort of pull these little thingies down here and be in good shape. So, nice play by Nazgul, short on the observers. Kind of a cool idea to go, you know, Viking Banshee and do a whole bunch of observer killing off with scans. And Nazgul taking the center just because he's so desperate for gas. But look at that huge goon army, just going to do a ton of damage. Has the observers there to protect, and just not much that Ogre can do. He's actually broke on gas. That's like nothing there. And some storms. He has the medic marine there to try to do some little fancy action, or should I say marines, because regular medics don't exist. We have medevacs in this game. Yeah, and that gets taken out promptly, and with 1 minute to go, Ogre really doesn't have that many more tricks left in his bag. Trying to expand once again, but just too many units for Nazgul, and Nazgul takes it out. So sweet. What did we learn from that game? Well, quite a bit. First of all, I have that big list of questions. And also I'm going to unmute the chat, so that way you can ask some questions. We'll have a little chat room. First of all, we had 1,100 viewers today. We're at 1,125, so thank you to all 1,125 of you who attended this Day 9 Daily. I think that's pretty cool, the unit composition we saw Nazgul sort of skew to. We opened up with what's becoming more recently the typical way of playing Protoss versus Terran. We're going for Immortal Colossus, really just getting a lot of those robotics facility units and getting some gateway units to back it up. And then doing some sort of early push, early pressure, and transitioning into a whole bunch of Colossi. And that air composition just screwed it up just so badly. I mean, that was just an absolutely beautiful job of using those air units to just screw up the unit composition of Nazgul, because I think he already had like those gateways up, or excuse me, the two robotics facilities up. I'm actually going to come right back over here. These two robotics facilities were almost useless in the later stages of the game. I mean, the observers were helping, the Colossi were helping quite a bit, but I don't feel like these got maximum use all game long, just thanks to those air units. That was fantastic. I'm getting messaged on Skype. I'm going to go ahead and close Skype in these last few seconds. But one of the things that I'm seeing right now is that the minerals got kind of high there, and there really wasn't that much use being made out of it, and it's kind of hard to tell sometimes what you should and shouldn't be doing with that money. And feel free to experiment around. For the most part, as long as you're spending the money and learning something from it, that's great. And every now and again, you'll realize that there is no good way to spend the money. So for instance, in Terran vs. Terran, you end up building up a ton of cash, and you want to be spending it on turrets and expanding, but sometimes that's not exactly viable because siege tanks just are getting in your way and the drops are blocking everything off. And you can't really go medic marine because, again, siege tanks get in the way of that too, so it's okay to let your money build up there as long as you're aware of these sorts of considerations. So that's something that I think I would have a huge question for. Is, how could I have better spent that money as both players? And definitely I think Ogre should be a little bit more aggressive. Oh, and Karnak, by the way, thanks for Karnak, who said that Ogre is actually his clan name, really old school, and his ID is Affe, A-F-F-E. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So thanks for the catch on that. Let's just take a few questions right there. Let us see here. People asking some questions about imbalance, but let's go ahead and take P4P's questions directly relating to this game. P4P says, why didn't the Xel'Naga watchtowers get used so much? They would have allowed Affe to see Nazgul's troop movement along the upper path. I think that already we're saying, hey, cool, you could make use of these watchtowers. You wouldn't even have to get the sensor tower that I suggested. I actually completely forgot about the Xel'Naga watchtowers as a tool. Then you don't even need to see the red dots. You can literally see exactly what's there. And that's a way to spend the minerals. Just constantly toss down 2 Marines and send them over there. Send 2 SCVs there. Just keep constant view on what's going on right there. So I absolutely love that as an idea. Just to use the money to use those watchtowers. I actually love that. I think that's great. I think that P4P highlights another issue there, which is that Affe wasn't doing the best job of watching those troop movement paths, and a lot of times Affe got all his guys clustered up in those 2 center planetary fortresses around the gold minerals, and just let the huge army waltz by, so be careful not to do that. So, let's see here. Gen Xis says, do you think that going for Marauders instead of Marines would have been better in the early game? Should he have transitioned into Marauders with all of his ACC. I don't know what ACC means, but perhaps you mean with all the barracks. Marauders is pretty standard nowadays. A lot of players are going 1 or 2 barracks, Marauder Marine, for early expanding in this matchup. And I think that my answer would be, why go Marauders in the early game if the Marines worked out just as fine? And as Terran, I got to save all this gas so I could go straight for the air plan. Perhaps I think that going Marauders a little later might be more effective. Instead of getting 4 or 5 of those starports, you could maybe get 2 and get 4 or 5 Banshees and then start pumping out medevacs and get this big Marine Marauder medevac army with Banshees to take out the Colossi. I think that'd be a super effective transition, or maybe even getting a 3rd starport in there so you can get Vikings and yet more medevacs. But I think that's a really cool little strategy to do. So let's see. People are asking things like 9987908 says, how do you feel about StarCraft 2 compared to StarCraft 1 skill-wise? That multiple building selection and improved AI seem to lower the skill ceiling. I actually think that is the opposite of true. A lot of people are really concerned about APM ceilings in the game. You have to play very fast. There's a lot of stuff to do. For instance, let's just take Protoss. The warp gates refresh very quickly, and you need to visually be looking at the place you want the warp gates to warp in. So sure, you have all of them selected at once, but think about how that macro goes. If you want to make 6 zealots, you go click, or you go Z-click, 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 right? You just click them all out, just all along the row. If you were in StarCraft 1 and you had 6 gateways, you'd have to go click Z-click, 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 Z, right? You'd have to click through all of them. And in a sense, you're doing the exact same amount of actions there. But also in StarCraft 2, you have to worry about Chrono Boost that's constantly refreshing at all your Nexi, or Nexuses. You have to be doing a ton of that. Or like the Roaches, the Queens, you constantly have to pop back, click on the Queen, and click on the hatchery. You literally cannot get away with just hotkeying all your hatches and spamming through them. Terran, you have to constantly be checking to make sure you can mule away. So, I think that there's just this phenomenal amount of skill gradation present already. And once they get done tweaking the units and we start seeing more varieties of strategy, I eagerly await to see all sorts of tournaments in the league explode onto the esports scene. And actually, I'm going to take this question by True Redemption 8 while we have about 1,000 people in here. This is great. I love this question. So I just want to reiterate. So we have 1,000 people in the stream right now. What happened with MLG? I announced that the MLG show match between Artosis and Ladder would be streamed live on Saturday night. And it turns out that was wrong. They were actually going to record it on Saturday night and just sort of see how it went. And if you think about it, that's actually really smart from their point of view. Just the first time they do any game, they make sure that it works out great. And as it turns out, there were some technical bumps along the way. So for instance, there's some glitches in Battle.net 2.0 when it comes to inviting big parties. And, we figured out a workaround at the time, but if it were live, there would have been 20 or 30 minutes of me going, and that's not so fun for anyone. And then one of the MLG gentlemen who I worked with was kind enough to say, well, Dave, since you announced it was going to be live, I'm just going to try to tell him we're going to get the VODs up really fast, to fix my mistake. And then he can't get the VODs up for 2 days, given the structure of how they were, re-editing the videos and working together. So so people were just like, all right, you said they were going to be posted and they're not up yet. It's really just a big miscommunication, because if you think about it, if it was on a Tuesday and the MLG matches just suddenly appeared and they said, hey, we had an MLG show match between Artosis and Louder, everyone would go, oh, awesome. For the most part, it was a delight working with the MLG people. It was fantastic. In particular, the person I co-casted with, I'd never co-casted with him before. I don't really cast with very many people very often, and he's just very easy, flowed very, very well, and their tech crew was awesome. So I'm really excited, because I'm not going to lie, it is my life's dream to see esports explode into the West. So I'm excited to see how MLG is going to carry it out. Hopefully they'll have other events as awesome as the other one in the future. So Nate River says, the Terran vs. Protoss matchup changed dramatically from StarCraft 1. Does this mean that Protoss does not have to be ahead in expansion because Terran units don't seem to be as cost efficient? That's exactly the sort of thinking I was referring to earlier, where we can use our knowledge from StarCraft 1 to help us from StarCraft 2, but it's important not to use the assumptions we make from StarCraft 1 without taking a good critical look at them. I always like to put it as, use the tools you learned from StarCraft 1, don't do the builds you learned in StarCraft 1. So out-expanding, I have no idea if that's necessarily a big deal or not, because honestly the reason why Protoss needs to out-expand Terran in the first StarCraft is because tanks, vultures, and mines do so much damage. Damage output is so high and so cost-effective that Protoss just needs a ton of stuff to even be even with it, let alone overcome it. So the out-expanding not only is you're able to do it because of Terran's immobility, but you're sort of needing to do it, given that resource deficit. In this game, I just don't really have enough data, because, for instance, this is the first game I have seen this mass air opening by Terran, and I would probably need 100 games or so of just those two strategies against each other to get an idea of whether I'm comfortable saying if anyone has a slight advantage on a certain map. I mean, you need a lot of games to really get a good idea of something, so... Again, my favorite answer is, I trust Blizzard. Let's go ahead and take some more questions here. Let's just go ahead and take yet one more question. This is actually a pretty good one. This is a nice general one to sort of wrap things up with. True Redemption 8, again, says, Dana, given the Banshee count, what do you think a better army composition would have been to deal with that air army? Clearly some sentries would offer the shield, but are Stalkers and Storm the best option for Protoss? Given the strictly ground targeting of Banshees, would a Starporter do have been a worthwhile attempt? Or would the easy production of Vikings in large numbers make it a poor choice? I think that's an excellent analysis right off the bat, but again, I would just go ahead and test it. And a lot of times it can be obnoxious to have to test things multiple times all the way through. I don't know if StarCraft 2 has a save game feature, but in StarCraft 1, that's the sort of thing I would exploit as much as possible. Of, getting 15 minutes into a game and say, all right, let's save it and let's reload it, and I'm going to do this thing 10 times to you. So then you get to skip that 15-minute portion over and over and over again. So Blizzane, last question, says, I've noticed during my research that many units and buildings have had their build times reduced in StarCraft 1. With that in mind, how do players pay for them? Do gatherers get resources faster? StarCraft 2 is actually just a really fast game. I'm actually a little, it's almost intimidating how fast it is, because I was always like, oh yeah, I have 310 APM average, And then like in StarCraft 2, I'm struggling to get like 150, There's just so much stuff going on, and what I would say is, I don't really want to make too much of a comparison between the money of the two, but I need to be a lot more mindful of how my resources work in StarCraft 2. Because in StarCraft 1, resources were just resources. If you had a bunch of workers there gathering money, they would just gather the money. And you would say, and off this base I can support 4 unit producing structures. And that was it. But in StarCraft 2 you have Chrono Boost, you have these mules, you have the queens getting this uneven distribution of larvae. So you have to be very aware of whether you're forgetting Chrono Boosts or mules or larva vomiting, how that affects things. Maybe I don't need a 3rd gateway. Maybe I just need to be remembering to Chrono Boost one of them, and that acts like a 3rd gateway. So there's still a lot of testing that's yet to be done, a lot of cool decision-making that happens later on in the game. And with that, I'm going to unmute the chat and go ahead and wrap up Day 9 Daily number 78. We got several more Day 9 Dailies going on this week. We got one at 10 p.m. tomorrow, 7 p.m. Tuesday, 9 p.m. Wednesday, and 7 p.m. on Thursday. We'll be doing Day 9 Daily 5 days a week as always, and hopefully doing a little bit more StarCraft 2 games. Tomorrow we're going to take a look at my brother Tasteless crushing my face in a game that we played as a little funaroo thingaroo. So hey, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and cheers.